All information in this program is known to be accurate at the time of recording. Any commentary by the host is for discussion purposes only. Anyone labeled a person of interest by the host or family has not been charged with a crime. All suspects charged with crimes related or unrelated to a case covered are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Opinions and views expressed by the host do not represent views of the families or sponsors of this program. In the U.S., there are over 600,000 missing person cases reported each year. Many go unnoticed by the general public and are not covered by the media or investigated by law enforcement. Here is just one of these stories. From Grim Media, I'm your host, Steve Stone, and this is the Grim Truth Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Grim Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Stone. Today we're going to cover episode 4 from last year, the cases of Misty McGinn and Joseph Lil Joe Boehm. Before we get into that, if you haven't done so already, you're interested in being an advocate for the missing, or you're interested in the missing in general, you find it to be an interesting topic, subscribe to the Grim Truth Podcast YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of the Grim Truth Podcast or any other content related to the missing and the murdered. Smash that like button so we can destroy the YouTube algorithm, so that way our content gets out to more and more viewers out there in the YouTube verse. And leave us a comment. Make sure that you get engaged, ask questions. It's very important that we get into the conversations. These cases do matter. They matter to the families. The families also check these videos out. So please leave a comment. Even if you don't have a question or anything, leave a comment of support for these families. Let them know you care. Let them know they have people out there that are rooting for them, and hopefully they get the answers that they need that bring their missing loved ones home. Also, if you'd like to help donate to the show, you can super thank me on YouTube. There's a little heart. It's $2, $5, $10. You can do a super thanks, and that also helps go to the show. Our first case is going to be Misty McGinn. Again, Misty went missing back from Rice, Texas on April the 19th, 2020. She was 17 years of age at the time of her disappearance. Now she's well over, she's an adult now. She was 5'3", 140 to 160 pounds with brown, reddish, pink hair. I think at the time she has dyed them. She had brown eyes with glasses. She has a tattoo at the time of her disappearance of an unfinished red rose on the inside of her left arm. There is a $1,000 reward for Misty, and we had the pleasure of talking to some family members about Misty's case last year, and we're going to replay that in hopes that maybe somebody else who hasn't listened to this can help get the answers that bring Misty back home. Here it is. Take a listen. Today's profile is of Misty McGinn. And I want to start off by saying that this case has those stigmas that I despise so much. Teenagers that suffer from mental illness, or they run away several times. But guess what? They still go missing. It's my opinion that other than adults with mental illnesses, children, teenagers, they should automatically be labeled endangered the moment they are not where they're supposed to be. They are the most vulnerable, most susceptible to outside influences, as well as susceptible to serious mistreatment by people who don't have their best interests in mind. Misty McGinn was last seen at her home in Rice, Texas on April 19th, 2020. She walked out of her home wearing a gray and yellow gas monkey hoodie with gray and black sweatpants. Misty also wears glasses and was wearing her clear pair at the time of her disappearance. Misty has also had a birthday since she went missing. I had the pleasure of speaking with Cindy McGinn and Jennifer Riggs, relatives of Misty, and I asked them to explain what type of person Misty is.
Misty has mental disabilities. When she's having a good day, She gets along with everybody. She's happy-go-lucky. But when she's having a bad day, she's just not herself. She's just not. She fights. She argues. You would think she's a typical teenager, but she's not.
Misty suffers from major depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia disorder, and is not on her medication. Someone who takes these medications, especially for those illnesses, has to maintain taking them unless otherwise told by a doctor. It can be very dangerous to stop taking these medications. I can speak from experience, having been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and social anxiety disorder, and I take medications to help with that. And I cannot stop taking the medications without being weaned off of them because they can cause major medical issues. Now, I spoke to Cindy about these dangers and the possibility of what could happen being off the medication.
Most of the meds made her gain weight. But the one med could have made her, with her just stopping it, it could have made her have a heart attack.
In cases where the teenagers have a history of running away, you have to look at some trends, patterns, past behaviors. Yes, Misty at times would run away. However, again, there was a pattern. Here's Cindy explaining what would take place.
She's left, but she has contacted us within 24 to 48 hours to come get her.
Here's where I'm going to grab my soapbox and stand on it. If a teenager runs away 2 or 3 times and always comes back within a certain amount of time, that becomes a pattern. Now, this time that Misty's gone missing, that pattern didn't take place. There was no contact after this point. And as is with many of these cases, the family knows that something isn't right. They know better than we do. Frankly, that they know better than most law enforcement. And that's not a knock on law enforcement. It is just my experience that the family knows that something isn't right. What helps families of the missing is getting the word out via the media. A story can generate leads, help bring these endangered loved ones home. They're almost paramount. They're needed. I will say it until I'm blue in the face. Mental health is a stigma. On top of being a missing teenager, another stigma. With a history of running away, another stigma. Something that the media just doesn't take an interest in. They don't cover these cases. You cannot find any news footage of this case anyplace. Plenty of printed stories. One of those stories was a possible sighting of Misty in Palestine, Texas. And I asked Cindy about that story.
What it was is they had talked to one of the guys that she was hanging out with one of the times that she had left before. And they said that she had talked about some boy down in Palestine. And they found out that that was not true.
The family believes Misty was talking to someone prior to her disappearance. Now, there are some things I'm not at liberty to discuss because the goal is to find Misty and protect the integrity of the case. That includes law enforcement. What I will say is that it's quite possible that someone knows where Misty is. I asked Cindy if Misty had spoken to anyone prior to her disappearance.
Not only did she use my husband's phone, she used 2 other neighbors' phones that night, calling the same person. There's a person of interest that she has been contacting days leading up to and of the day that she left, that we're waiting for them to finish investigating him.
Now, the family knows who this person is, and the police have all the information, and they are currently investigating. It seems to be a procedural issue at the time. However, law enforcement has assured the family that they are not going to give up looking for Misty. Misty's case, like so many others with mental illness, have such a hard time because of the constant stigmas. I talk about them endlessly. The illness that Misty has causes her to have episodes where she'll leave for 24, 48 hours and then come back. Misty's family has gone above and beyond to protect her, even installing a security system in the house that would sound anytime Misty would leave the house. I asked Cindy, what has been the biggest hindrance involving Misty's case?
What's a hindrance to her investigation is the fact that her mental illness causes her to run off all the time. And by law, we have to call them every time she took off, or we would have been charged with neglect. So we did what we were told to do, and in the end, they deem her as an habitual runaway. They're not looking at her mental health. They're not taking into account that she has the mindset of a 13, 14-year-old. Doesn't fit the criteria for Amber Alert because we didn't have a license plate number, and she wasn't 16. She doesn't fit the criteria for the Clear Alert, also known as the Ashanti Alert, because she's not 18 or above.
Since Misty's disappearance, she had a birthday, which makes her 18. Obviously, when she went missing, she was still a minor. The law is clearly meant to help people. Do not seem to do enough, especially in this case. Now you can hear the frustration, and I, for one, don't blame her. Imagine you're caring for a teenager with medical and mental health issues. You're doing everything you possibly can, and when you think the systems in place are going to help you, you learn that each system has a flaw, and Misty doesn't meet not one of those requirements. Now, this is not a law enforcement issue. We can't blame it on the police. It's a legislative issue. It's a legislative issue that should be changed so it can help teens like Misty who are endangered. Like many families, Misty's is not just sitting around. They're spearheading a family network, pounding the pavement, going from location to location, passing out flyers, doing whatever they can to help search for Misty. Here's Jen and Cindy discussing that.
Now, my husband goes out every day, hands out flyers. My husband makes phone calls every day to different agencies trying to get help, different news stations trying to get help. Me and Cindy, I know, man the computers. I know of times that Cindy has went out and done stuff in the communities trying to put stuff out there about her.
Passed out over 5,000 flyers on Misty.
We sat one day out where I actually went out with Cindy and Marvin, and we had 3 other people with us that we passed out flyers at the Shell station in Price, and then we moved on, made our way back to Red Oak, Texas, where we moved from, and put out flyers there.
We've done stakeouts. We've gotten tips, or somebody would call in and say, oh, we've seen her here, and, you know, we went there, you know, because Misty does not know my vehicle, nor any of Misty's friends, or my husband's, or my son's, or my daughter's. So it's like there was one time they said she was seen in Dallas at a hotel, and I sent my 2 nephews out there because it was kind of in a rough part of town. And, you know, I told them, you know, don't do anything stupid. If you see her, you know, call me or whatever. And then my nephew thought that he saw Misty's mom. And so we had went out there, and of course we didn't see anything. And believe me, it wasn't a very good neighborhood that we were in. I've never seen so many drug deals go down in my whole entire life, and I'm from Michigan.
With everything that this family's been through, they have even had to deal with individuals looking to profit from their pain and Misty's disappearance. One such instance just floors me when I heard about it. And if you have a soul, or you're a God-fearing individual, this should just make you sick to your stomach. Here is Cindy explaining this horrific incident that just shows what people will do to take advantage of a situation.
out of the clear blue, some guy saying that he had her, or I needed to come and get my girl before the situation got out of control. And I'm like, well, okay, tell me where to get her, and I'll come get her. And then he's like, your girl needs pancakes. All right, well, come on over, and I'll fix you all the pancakes you need. Or heck, I'll take you outside and hop and feed you all pancakes. And then he kept saying, well, I have her here in Ennis, meet me at the CVS, and, da-da-da-da-da. And, so I'm like, okay, well, Ennis was, it's about 30 minutes away from me. And so luckily I got a hold of my husband before he got to his job. And I told him to meet me there, but not to park in, the CVS driveway, to park like across the street or whatever, because she knows my husband and my son. But the guy that they were with, that was one of my husband's helpers, she doesn't know him. So I told my husband, I says, well, send him into CVS, and then, I'll get out and whatever, and I'll go in CVS and see what I, can find out. Of course, I called Jennifer and let them know and everything, and they met us up there, and I told them just to stay away, because, if it was Misty, then, they would know. And the guy asked me what I was wearing, and, and I told him I had a black hoodie on. And, then he messaged me back and says, you got a gray hoodie on. I'm like, no, I'm not even there yet. I'm 4 minutes out, so I went in there, and I was in there for probably a good hour. And he kept saying, well, do this and do this. And he says, well, I want to be anonymous. I want to do the right thing and be anonymous, And I'm like, I have no problem with that. I just want my needs, so she can get the help that she needs. And so then he wanted his money, because there's $1,000 reward out for Misty. And I told him, and that's not a problem. And he's like, okay. He says, but I can't have cash. I said, well, I'll write you a check or get you a money order while I'm here. And he's like, no, he wanted it on like one of those Visa cards. So I talked to the lady up at that was working, and she told me, she pretended like, she was doing it and everything like that. I sent him a copy of the card, and I told him, I said, no, I want to know that you have my niece, and so forth. And he's like, well, I need to see the back of the card. And I said, do you think I'm stupid? Show you the back of the card so you can activate it and so forth and whatnot. Or whatever it is that they do, I don't know. And then it ends up being a scam.
The grim truth about the Misty McGinn case is, in the world in which we live, where we have modern day slavery in regards to sex trafficking, and we're talking about sex trafficking girls as young as 6 and 7 years of age, it is important that legislation change, that no matter how a child leaves, whether it's habitually running away, troubles at school, mental health issues, trouble with the law, whatever it is, no matter what, this should automatically be an Amber Alert. Forget the kidnapping, because a child at that age can't make rational decisions on their own anyway. That's why they can't enter into a contract until they're the age of 18. In Misty's case, she suffers from mental illness. Again, boom, should automatically qualify for an Amber Alert. But this didn't happen in this case. She's still out there somewhere, and no one has any answers. The other thing is I want parents especially to listen to this. If a boyfriend or a friend of your child a lot of kids are led by others, and it's very, and in this case, Misty's family was doing everything that they could, locking the doors, cameras, and it still wasn't enough to keep her home. It's very important that moms and dads out there, trust me, I know, try to stay on top as much as possible. And even then, you still need an extra layer of protection, and you hope that's law enforcement, and that's not the case here either. And finally, I want to add scammers. These group of scammers that tell you that they have your loved one and want money, they're the same scammers that call people pretending to be the IRS. They're the same people that are going to throw you in jail because you owe a hospital bill. These are the same types of scammers. They troll Facebook, all these other things. If you want to prevent some of these scams, the best thing for you to do if you have a missing loved one is don't put your number on anything. Get an email. If law enforcement's investigating, they have their information. But if you're out on your own and law enforcement's not helping you, and you're doing things on your own, use your own email, put it on the flyer, and if you really do need any more help, give me a call, Steve Stone at thegrimtruth.com. Again, Misty McGinn went missing from Rice, Texas on April the 19th, 2020. She was 5'3", 140 to 160 pounds, with brown, reddish, pink hair, brown eyes. She wore glasses and a tattoo of an unfinished red rose on the inside of her left arm, and she had pierced ears. There is a $1,000 reward for her missing. If you have any information on the whereabouts of Misty McGinn, please contact the Rice PD, 903-326-4146, 903-326-4146, and if you need to, you can remain anonymous. Our next case is a case that has gone long enough with no help, with no answers, with a lot of rumor and speculation, up to and including a very well-known member of the city of Marshall, who may have information, and we'll talk about that at the end. Joseph Lil Joe Boehm went missing on January the 25th, 2001. Folks, that's before 9/11. He was 6 feet, 130 pounds, brown hair, hazel eyes. He had a tattoo of the Confederate flag on his right upper arm and a scar on his forehead. There's a $10,000 reward for information on his whereabouts. His sister Jolene has done everything you can humanly possible think of to find her brother, and she still champions for him today. I've talked to Jolene many times about her brother's case. I'm still helping with them, and we're also pleased to announce that we're going to be having a private investigator look into this case real soon. But here's my initial conversation with Jolene when I interviewed her last year for the first profile of Lil Joe's case. Take a listen. The second case we profile for this episode is that of the 20-year disappearance of Joseph Lil Joe Boehm, who went missing on January 25th, 2001 from Marshall, Texas. This case has a lot of unanswered questions, ones that his sister Jolene would like to have answered. We had just passed the 20-year mark, and Joe has not been seen or heard from since. And it was just recently when I had the pleasure of speaking with Jolene about the kind of person that Joe is.
Well, he, of course, liked to hunt, fish, be outdoors, working on things, whether it be a motor or just piddling around in the yard doing something, We grew up on 23 acres, so, that's the woods was what we had growing up, and working on motors or what have you, he would just have to, figure things out, and sometimes, he would just get to where he'd get so accident prone. He was always getting into little mischief and then getting hurt or something, but always coming out on the other side okay, scars to prove.
Before Joe went missing, he had recently flipped his truck and was staying at a friend's house. The friend, by the name of Coley, Joe was staying there a short time, up until he went missing. Now, the timeline is pretty much set. However, it's the different versions of what took place January 25th, 2001 that seem to be at odds. I asked Jolene to go back and explain what she was told and how long it took for her to be told Joe went missing. Here's Jolene.
Well, you got to recall, I didn't know about it till 10 days later, because Coley didn't call me until February the 3rd, but it was supposedly January the 25th, that night at Coley's house. They were all getting ready for bed and everything. Lil Joe was already dressed to go to sleep, and apparently he stayed in the front living room. Or maybe he did that night, but Coley's mom was down there that week too, which that was actually her house. It's just Coley was living there. And he was only there for 2 weeks because I took him there. He had flipped his last running truck, I want to say January the 11th. January the 11th is when he flipped his last running truck and called me and asked if I'd come and pick him up the next night or the next day and take me to town and, get some errands done, and he was just going to go and stay with Coley. I was like, yeah, that's fine. You want me to come get you tonight? And he was like, no, I'm fine. I'm just sitting here picking the glass out of my forehead. So I was like, okay, I will be there as soon as I drop hubby off at work, and me and Kenny, my son, would come on out. Dropped him off at Coley's on the 11th, and I said the 3rd was when Coley called saying, have you seen Lil Joe? And I was like, no, not since I dropped him off at your house. Why? Oh, nobody's seen him since the 25th. And I even questioned him, why'd you wait so late?
So just to recap, Jolene drops Lil Joe off to stay with his friend January the 11th. January 25th is the last time Coley supposedly sees Joe. Then 10 days later, February the 3rd, Jolene is contacted and told that her brother has not been seen. 10 days. In a missing persons case, that's an eternity of time. Time wasted, leads lost. This is not just conjecture on my part, it's just a fact. 10 days. Jolene then tells me what she did after she found out.
And at the time, I lived in Jefferson, which is just like 20 minutes down the road. And once hubby got home, it was on Saturday, and he got home kind of fairly early. I told him what was happening, and he stayed home with our child, and I ran to Marshall. And first I went to Coley's house because they had the most recent picture of him. That's the one where he's facing straight and he's in that camo looking
the camo jacket, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is the very last picture that was taken. So it was in December, which was like about a month or a little more than a month before he went missing. So I got that picture from them, and I ran up to the police department and filed the police report. It was around dark.
So Jolene receives the information that Joe is missing on February the 3rd, 2001. Again, I cannot stress this enough. 10 days goes by before she is notified that her brother is missing. She goes down and files the report with the most recent picture of Joe. I asked Jolene what Coley said happened that night Joe left.
What Coley was saying was that he was ready for bed. It was around 11 to midnight that someone called on the home phone asking for Lil Joe. And I still today don't understand or know exactly who picked that phone call up, because Miss Brunell, Coley's mama, she couldn't remember. You know, she's like, well, I've already told the police what I said, you know, and her story still didn't, it kept changing from what I wrote down and what I also remembered. I still really don't know who answered it, but they said it was for Lil Joe. Got him. He got on the phone. He wasn't on there very long, and went and got dressed in the boots and jeans, gray T-shirt, and the camo jacket. I don't know if it was that same one that, like in the picture of him or not, but it was supposed to be some kind of camo jacket. And apparently Coley was already in bed. And Miss Brunell, I don't know, I guess she was back there in the spare bedroom. Don't know if she was asleep or not. She says she wasn't. Let's see, Lil Joe walked out. Angelia, the girlfriend, Coley's girlfriend, she was out there on the front steps smoking her cigarette, getting ready for bed. She'd already put the kids down. And Lil Joe went over there and said, lock up when you go in, and I'll catch up with y'all in the morning, because he was supposed to watch the dogs that following morning and all weekend. He was going to, I guess, stay there at that house there on Victory Drive and babysit their dogs, or dog sit, whatever you call it.
Joe supposedly said that he was only going for the night because he had a commitment to do the dog watching that weekend. Also, keep in mind, we're getting several versions of a story told by 3 different people. Coley's mother, Coley's girlfriend at the time, and Coley himself. The important question really revolves around the phone call. Who was on the phone? Was it a male? Was it a female? Who answered the phone?
Like I said, I still can't pinpoint who answered the phone, because it was told to me that Brunell did, Coley's mom, but then she said she didn't. So, you know, I'm getting wishy-washy stories there.
So I wanted to get a sense of what Joe's demeanor was right after he got this phone call and he left. Keep in mind, according to his friends, they were all getting ready for bed. Here comes the phone call. What happened after that? Was Joe mad? What was his state of mind? I asked Jolene if they told her or gave her a sense of Joe's demeanor right when he left.
Supposedly he was, I guess, agitated or pissed. Not really pissed, but he wasn't in a good mood, apparently. Frustrated, whatever, but pretty much just told Angelia, don't wait up for me, and I'll catch up with y'all in the morning. And took off walking towards town. That was the last time that she had seen him.
I asked Jolene after she filed the police report when law enforcement began questioning Coley and the others who saw Joe on January 25th. What she says sent up a few warnings. Take a listen.
I understand right away, you know, and 2, Coley wouldn't let them search the house.
Okay.
But they would only let them search the front living room, because that's supposedly where he slept at. Weird to me. Angelia and Coley, they left about 3 or 4 months after Lil Joe went missing. They moved up to Dallas. And I hated that, because I was like, well, what if Lil Joe comes back and y'all are not there?
Coley was Joe's best friend. I asked Jolene, and she said they pretty much did everything together. Now, I don't like to speculate. I've said this before, because that's just going down rabbit holes, and it serves no purpose. It doesn't get to the truth. However, I do have to ask some questions. Why did Coley not want the police conducting an investigation into the disappearance of his best friend? Why did he not want the police to search his mother's house? The house that they lived in at the time, that wasn't Coley's, that was his mother's. Why did Coley and his girlfriend, 3 months after, leave and just go to Dallas? The answer to those questions is we don't know. Now, I did ask if Coley's demeanor changed when Joe went missing.
Like I said, they weren't in town very long after he went missing. And Coley pretty much didn't stay in contact with me, and that's supposed to be his best friend. You know, I mean, my best friend, if I ended up having to be, you know, if I had to move for whatever situation, I would keep in contact with them at least every year, like around the anniversary or something. But I had to finally track Coley down. And to be honest, I didn't do it. One of the, you know, because I've done a podcast on Unfound before. It was last year.
Yes, ma'am.
In August.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, one of those ladies had found Coley for me because, he changed his name. He's going by Jason. That's his middle name, I believe.
Okay.
And when I spoke to Angelia before doing the podcast, she had made the comment that when they moved up there, that Coley was so weird and different and everything, and he started going by the name of Jason instead of Coley, and that they ended up breaking up shortly afterwards.
So Jason, formerly known as Coley, has decided to rebrand himself and is now acting differently. Why? We don't know. What we do know is the change is so significant that Angelia, Coley, who is now Jason's girlfriend, decides to break it off. The other puzzling thing is, again, Coley is supposed to be Lil Joe's best friend, a guy that they did everything together. Here's something else that doesn't seem to add up.
I'm friends with him on Facebook now.
Okay.
And it bothers me because I don't understand why he's not sharing the reward posts. And I messaged him yesterday, I think it was, because I looked on his profile and he has not shared nothing of Lil Joe.
Jolene doesn't understand why the disconnect now when it comes to Coley and the lack of involvement in helping find or even share information about his best friend, missing for 20 years. It was explained to me that these two were so close, in fact, that Coley would hang out with Joe one weekend, and then it would be Joe at Coley's the next. What happened? We don't know. And again, I'm not going to speculate. However, I wanted to know if it was out of character for Joe just to up and leave for long periods of time and not contact anyone.
Letting somebody known that, you know, I mean, because, okay, my cousin Crystal, she had said that like I guess a few weeks or maybe a couple of months, whatever, before he went missing, he had quit his job at Poser's business forum.
Okay.
He had quit that job and he was going to go sit out his warrants because he has warrants out for his arrest, DWIs. And he told Crystal that he was going to go and set them out instead of paying them. So, you know, I mean, he had made that plan, you know, but he never did go up there to do it. He went missing.
I asked Jolene about the relationship with law enforcement and how they initially handled Joe's case. I asked this question for several reasons. Every missing person case, there are different variables, and oftentimes these variables affect how law enforcement takes on the case. I want to educate listeners that the time is always against the missing. You want to get out the information as quick as possible. The quicker the information is given to authorities, the better the chances. Again, not discounting the other variables like stigmas. And in Joe's case, it seems like stability was an issue.
Just the first 3 months or 4 months, I want to say it went through 3 or 4 different detectives. Finally, it got with this one, and he's the one who ended up finding the psychic and doing that whole ordeal. Just this psychic she's helped others in the past, helped FBI and helped solve cold cases and what have you. And
How do you feel about that?
well, and to be honest, I didn't realize that I had asked him, but when I was reading back in my journal earlier in the week, I had asked that detective because I was kind of at my wit's end. I was like, is there any psychic that you know of or whatever? And he apparently had found one and got that going in '06.
Having a person go missing, as I say often, has to be a living hell that I cannot even imagine. And for the families looking at all options to get the answers they need, I know I would do anything. That's including speaking with a psychic. There are those who have their own opinions on that. And all I'm going to say is, you know what opinions are like. Back in 2001, I can remember personally having a cell phone that was the size of a small Cadillac. And I did ask Jolene if Joe had a cell phone. He did. But also, we hear a different version of the story that night on January 25th, 2001, from Joe's best friend, Coley.
Yes, and he left it in the wallet.
At Coley's.
At Coley's, yeah. And he took a gun, is supposedly what Coley's had told the police. He took a gun and not his wallet and not his cell phone. And two, okay, why is it that Lil Joe was not living there for a long period of time? Lil Joe has his own personal cell phone. Who in the world's going to be calling him on the home phone? Because apparently you can't have no record of that.
Say what?
They supposedly looked, they couldn't find, because we're a small town, they don't keep records of local calls.
This new story that comes up later, Joe leaves the house that night with a gun, leaves his cell phone, leaves his wallet. It's astonishing. And in my humble opinion, just raises more questions about what really happened that night. Why the different versions of the story? I mean, this goes back 20 years. And Jolene also feels this way.
Their stories just seem to have changed a little bit. And then, like I said, Miss Burnell, the mama, I got her phone number, called her, and she was like kind of surprised that I was calling her. And, he still hasn't been found. And I was like, no, ma'am, and I would just like to know, what you remember back then, Well, I've done told the police everything that I knew. And I was like, well, it's almost like I was trying to grill her, but I just wanted her to talk to me. And she just was like real closed mouth kind of, but she let a few things out. It just still didn't seem to fit right.
The troubling fact and grim truth about Little Joe's case is the fact that it's 21 plus years old, and that not a whole lot was done in the very beginning. The second fact of the matter is his supposedly great friend, Coley, wasn't much help. Acts hinky, he helps one day passing out flyers, changes his name, and moves from the area. We tried to have the opportunity. Well, I did make an attempt to talk to Coley during the very first podcast last year about what happened to Joe. He agreed, and then he changed his mind and blocked me. Now, Coley's been in and out of jail regarding a substance abuse problem, most recently a few months ago. But why run and change your name? Why the behavior? Did you owe somebody money? Was it another issue unrelated to Joe? We don't know that because he hasn't talked. The pressure's got to be put on him and his then girlfriend at the time, Angelia Phillips, who were both there, who both said that Little Joe got a phone call and left everything he had everything he owned but a gun and left. That don't sound right. A man that smoked cigarettes just leaves everything. It doesn't make any sense. Sources that we've talked to over the past year and almost 2 years have told us that there was a party that night at Cooley's house. Now, we've only had one person confirm that, and we're definitely looking for others. In the meantime, there's the need to talk to Coley and get him to talk about what he knows is important. If he knows nothing, why the behavior? During our investigation into Lil Joe's disappearance, names kept coming up. One of those individuals I've talked to. But one name in particular keeps coming up about the person possibly knowing what happened to Lil Joe. A gentleman by the name of Hermie Hines' name's come up in several conversations we've had with sources familiar with the case. Now, several of these stories actually come from card games being played across the area, and Hermie Hines' name pops up as an individual who might know what happened to Lil Joe. We've yet to confirm this, and we look forward to the opportunity to do so. In the meantime, Jolene has worked tirelessly on getting Joe's case looked at, as well as I. We are hopefully going to have a private investigator on the case real soon, and Jolene has worked tirelessly to get this billboard put up about information regarding Lil Joe. If you have any information on the whereabouts of Joseph Lil Joe Boehm, you can email at liljoebain20@gmail.com, or you can call the Texas Attorney General's Office Cold Case and Missing Persons Unit 512-936-0742. Again, 512-936-0742. And if you need to, you can remain anonymous. There is a $10,000 reward for information that leads to the recovery of Joseph Lil Joe Boehm. That's going to do it for this episode of the Grim Truth Podcast. I want to thank all the families who gave me the privilege and the opportunity to tell their stories and talk about their missing loved ones. And if you want to help these families, make sure you leave a comment down below. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. I'll leave the number to the Attorney General's office up on the post when I post this in the description on YouTube and on our Facebook page, as I have not been able to change the flyers yet. Please join us next time as we continue to be a voice for the voiceless in search of the truth. I'm your host, Steve Stone, and this has been the Grim Truth Podcast.